Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 6, 2024 meeting of the Zoning Board of Review. We're here again on Tiverton's version of War and Peace, also known as the season's proposal. And, why don't we start, why doesn't everybody just introduce themselves so I don't have to keep doing it? Want to start?
George Alzabak.
And full voting member.
Mike Marcellus, town solicitor.
Lisi Gescheit, chairperson.
Dave Collins, voting member.
Jennifer Hilton Kavanaugh, voting member.
Jay Jackson, voting member.
Tara Ferrara, I take the minutes.
And our stenographer.
Susan LeBlanc.
Nice to see you again. Okay. Where are we? Who are we? And why are we here?
As the applicant, I'll just remind where we are is we had finished presenting the applicant's case, and the objectors had been presenting witnesses, and I think they're at their last witness, at least the last witness that we're aware of, Mr. Paul Toback, and they can introduce him.
Okay.
Yes, and Madam Chair, that's accurate. And before we would proceed with presentation of our witness, I wanted to maybe address potential housekeeping matters as we're bringing this case, our case in chief, to a close. And so I think what we envision, and this is just what my intuitive thought here, is that we have the Mr. Toback present his evidence.
For a second, I'm sorry. Get to the microphone because they just complained about that.
Oh, yeah, so Mr. Toback will be presenting this evening. There still is obviously the opportunity for the public to provide general objections. And I just thought maybe in fairness that you might have that as a separate hearing or the next hearing so that the public can be apprised of that opportunity. I think that many people have come to the hearing knowing that there's a hearing, as you might know, provide those general objections, and then they're asked, this is not the time to do that. You will have a time to do that. And so, in fairness, I think to the public, as you can see, we have not really that big of a crowd here tonight. Usually, we've had greater. So that's just one issue. Second issue for consideration. Second issue is we have some procedural matters which could also be heard at the next hearing. I know that we have a motion to strike, that is Karen Benson, has a motion to strike some testimony from one of the applicant's experts, as well as, I'm not sure if the applicant's motion, which it presented, is still standing or not on standing. And so it seems to me that as we go into post-hearing briefing, it would be advantageous for the board and the parties to know what evidence are we going to be arguing for and against in terms of our positions. And so those motions would be helpful to be resolved before we go into our pre-hearing, post-hearing memorandums. And then lastly, another area of consideration is that that at some point after the memorandums are submitted, I think it would be helpful, of course it's your decision, that there be an opportunity for brief oral argument, both for us to present some positions that we might not be able to present in our briefing after we reviewed the other sides. And maybe more importantly, oftentimes this happens in court, other zoning board and planning boards, the members of the board may have questions, clarifying questions about what we've briefed and for further explanation. So public comment opportunities, first issue. Second issue is the motions, and third is, if you will, the post-hearing memorandum oral argument. So those three issues.
Well, as far as the, let's see how far we get tonight. If we can take some public comment tonight, we will. We're not going to stay past 10 o'clock. I don't know if we can even make it till 10 given less 24 hours. And as we'll hear your motion to strike before you, at the end of the case, before you submit the stuff, before we ask for the brief, so you'll have a ruling.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
And you'll consider all argument on those briefs? the night you're going to be making a decision, possibly?
Yeah, I think we can, let's see where we are. All right,
Thank you very much.
okay. How are you feeling, Ms. Benson?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Madam
Good.
Chair. I'm 1 month post-op, so I'm not as strong as I might be, but, I'm here and only with a cane, and yes, thank you.
She's kicked me twice, so.
Wait until she starts kidding with you with the cane.
It's good for emphasis.
Seemed powerful enough to me.
So Karen Benson on behalf of Preserve Tiverton, and we will call Paul Toback, please, as our first witness. Come sit right here.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to ask you when you testify to make sure you're speaking into the microphone, because for some reason, some people can't hear, so.
Sure. Hopefully that works. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Sir, could you raise your right hand?
Oh.
You solemnly swear that the matter, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Could you state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Paul Toback, T-O-B-A-K, Toback.
Good evening, Mr. Toback.
Good evening.
Can you tell me, please, what do you do for a living?
I'm a real estate broker
And where do you work?
at Hogan Associates in Middletown, Rhode Island.
How long have you worked there?
6 years.
And do you have any formal education in the field of being a real estate broker?
Yes, I've been a real estate broker in the state of Rhode Island, specifically in Newport County, since 1974.
And are you a licensed broker?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you have any other work in the field that might be relevant to tonight's hearing?
Well, I'm also on the Newport Tax Appeal Board, and many years ago, I worked in the building inspector's office for the city of Newport, and then later, I worked for the redevelopment agency of Newport.
The Tax Appeals Board, for the city of Newport, what does that entail?
People appeal their assessments, and we review the information and make a determination.
Okay. Now, this witness is accepted as an expert, but out of an abundance of caution, I brought an extra copy of his CV. That's what's before him, because I know we're wanting to have a good record. So even though it's previously been submitted months and months ago, I would submit it tonight for tonight.
It's in the record, so
So you don't need this copy marked?
I think it's already in the record.
Fine.
We have this, yeah.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay, great, great. Okay, Mr. Toback, so I submit that he be admitted as a full witness to be able to testify as an expert in real estate matters. That's what he's doing here tonight.
You don't have any objection, do you, Mr.?
No objections as to real estate matters. We reserve for objections if he strays beyond that.
Yeah, of course.
Now, can you tell the board, please, what you did to prepare for tonight's hearing?
Well, I reviewed testimony from Jim Rule. I watched the YouTube proceedings, and I attended 3 of the zoning board of appeal meetings in person.
Okay, so you heard who testify in person?
Well, the 2 traffic experts, the one for the Colbia, and the one for Preserve Tiverton, and then, of course, Jim Rule's testimony.
Okay. Did you review any reports in preparation for your testimony?
Yes, I did.
And what reports were those, please?
It was the 2 reports that Jim Rule presented. One was from 2023, and the other one was March of 2024.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we're getting some distortion from the microphone.
Oh.
We just need the witness to
back up a little bit.
A little bit.
I don't want it to be too loud.
You can't win.
The idea was about 4 inches away.
Oh,
You could hear the echo and the popping.
Yeah, 2023 and March 2024.
I think we left off that you reviewed Mr. Hoole's report. Did you review any materials in the town of Tiverton?
yes.
What were they?
Well, I started in the planning department, reviewing the application for Colbia, and
Just a minute. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to push that microphone away from you. just
push
a little
away,
bit.
okay.
It'll be about
'Cause
4
it-
inches.
oh, is that
Now
4
say
inches?
check.
Check, check. Is that good? Okay. And I went to the building inspector's office to review the plans, and I went to the tax assessor's office and got a copy of the tax assessor's card on the property.
Did you review the application of Colbia Enterprises LLC?
I did. I also went to land evidence and got a copy of the deed.
Did you review the town of Tiverton zoning code?
I did.
Any other town of Tiverton generated documents?
Yes, on the comprehensive community plan.
Okay. How about listings and sales of real estate in the town of Tiverton?
Yes, I used the multiple listing service information.
Okay. And did you review some data assembled by Stephen Hendrick?
I did.
Okay. So, what about the site itself? Are you familiar with that site?
Yes, I am.
And how did you get familiar with it?
Well, I visited it
How many times?
many times, but most recently, probably a half a dozen times.
Okay. Now, is it true that you have experience specifically with real estate, selling real estate here in the town of Tiverton?
Yes.
And for the board members who might not know, can you give us an example of that?
Well, I represented the town with the sale of the Essex Library.
Can you describe that process briefly, in a sentence or two?
Sure. I listed the property. The town had an appraisal done. We competitively submitted a proposal, and we were fortunate enough to also find a buyer for the property. And actually, the price exceeded the appraisal, sales price.
And when was that?
Oh, my God, must have been about 7 years ago, I believe.
Now, you said you visited the site a couple of times. Is it accurate to say you also visited the neighborhood around the proposed site?
Yes.
Okay, can you give us some examples of where you went for that part of your work?
Sure. I visited the villages at Mount Hope Bay. I went, of course, up and down Main Road, Sousa Road, Fish Road, Route 24, in general, all those areas.
Madam Chair, I have a list of some of the things that the witness relied on. I think the record is complete, but out of an abundance of caution, I brought it if the members wanted that submitted as an exhibit. It's a one-page letter. It's like a checklist that I'm using for my examination.
I don't think we have.
Fine.
It's necessary.
Just wanted to be sure because we focused on getting the best record we can. Okay. So you testified, Mr. Toback, that you reviewed the report that was prepared by Mr. Hoole regarding this project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so now as you're here tonight testifying, you're familiar with his conclusions, is that correct?
Yes.
And you agree with some of the conclusions that are set forth in his report, don't you?
I do.
The zoning, for example, you don't dispute, the acreage, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay. Be sure that you give us an oral answer, okay, Mr. Toback, for the record? Don't nod your head.
Oh, yes.
All right, thank you. And what is your understanding of what Colbia is requesting before this board tonight?
3 special exceptions. One would be for the drive-up window. The second would be for the gas pumps, the 4 pumps and the 8 dispensers. and the other one would be for the signage and lighting associated with it.
Okay. Now, do you have an opinion with regard to whether the development will be detrimental to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare?
Well, my concern would be more with the safety aspect.
Why is that?
Well, the added traffic and the location at the intersection of Sousa Road and Main Road.
What in particular about Main Road concerns you safety-wise?
Well, it's 2 lanes, and it's actively traveled. And as reported, the school buses go up and down a couple times a day, and they stop frequently. And it's been described as the school buses as creating a bottleneck.
Okay. Now, just to be clear, you're not a traffic expert, is that correct?
That is correct.
But you testified that you heard the traffic expert's testimony.
I did.
And so is it your opinion here today that that would be a factor that would impact the neighborhood?
Yes.
Traffic?
Yes.
Now, you heard Mr. Hoole's testimony, did you not? With
did.
regard whether or not this development would be compatible with the neighboring uses.
Madam Chair, if I just may, I'm a little confused. We just finished hearing Mr. Toback talk about traffic. He's not a traffic expert.
I agree.
That's true.
I agree.
I'm moving on to the other.
Yep,
Yep, I'm done with traffic.
good point.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not this proposed development will be compatible with the neighboring uses?
Not the residential uses.
Can you describe the immediate area? Although the board members are familiar with the area, can you tell us a little bit about the zoning and your observations, please?
Well, to the south, you have the Historic District, and to the west, you have the villages at Mount Hope Bay, and to the east, you would have Sousa Road residential properties, and also to the west, you would have R40, and to the north, you would have R60.
And so how would this proposed use adversely affect the general character?
In my opinion, it's not desirable for residential neighbors.
But you don't dispute that it's not zoned residential, not where this development is proposed?
No, it's not zoned residential.
Would you say that there are other types of commercial use that could be compatible?
Yes,
Would you say that, for example, an antique store, a commercial use, could be compatible?
I would think that, yes.
Can you give any other examples of commercial uses that, in your opinion, could be compatible with the neighboring uses?
Well, retail would certainly be one. Light retail, that is. And what's permitted by right, I think that would certainly be compatible. If it were just a convenience store, I could see that as being compatible.
Did you hear Mr. Hoole's testimony that the Seasons Market was reminiscent of an old corner store?
Yes, I did.
You're smiling. Do
Yeah.
you agree with that characterization?
Well, the analogy I would use is that the Seasons store is like a corner store, would be like comparing Walmart to a Five and Dime.
You mentioned a moment ago that uses that are allowed by right would be compatible with the neighboring uses. In other words, within the commercial zone. Is that your opinion here tonight?
Yes.
All right. Is your opinion, or your conclusions, I should say, in any way based on the fact that it's not one and not two, but actually 3 special use permits that are being requested?
Yes.
Why is that? Describe that for the board, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
Why is it that you think it matters that it's not 1 or 2
Oh.
special use permits, but that it's a cumulative, it's 3 special use permits?
Now I understand. Yes, I do believe that the number of special uses are cumulative. 2 would be more impactful than 1, and 3 would be more impactful than 2.
And is this a factor when you say that it'll have an impact on the neighborhood?
Yes,
The fact that there are 3 special use permits being requested?
yes,
Okay. And that's, when you use the word cumulative or compounding, is that what you mean?
yes.
Now, Mr. Houle concluded in his testimony and his report that the proposed gas pumps would not likely impact the neighborhood. Do you agree with that conclusion?
No.
Why not?
Well, I believe that once again, it increases the use of a convenience store where you have people coming specifically for gasoline, but also the large trucks that would be delivering the gasoline and the fumes and noise associated with it would not be, in my opinion, compatible with residential properties.
You said that you've testified that you have some familiarity with buyers looking at properties in Tiverton, is that right?
Yes.
And what do buyers who are interested in living in Tiverton, what do they look for? Can you describe some of the things that you hear from people who are searching to live in Tiverton?
Sure. I believe they are looking for, a small community, something that would give them tranquility and privacy to a degree.
Does the comprehensive plan tell us anything about what identifies Tiverton as a unique and special community?
Yes, it does. It indicates its uniqueness as a small community with the charm associated with being a small community. And the word uniqueness is one of the words they use to describe it.
Is this unique feature a part of its visual qualities?
Including other things, yes.
And do you think that this proposal, this development, is in keeping with that quality?
No,
Why not?
because it's a commercial use that will have gas pumps and drive up fast food and an abundance of lighting that will be a beacon to vehicular traffic.
So you don't think a corner store would have a drive-up window?
No, I don't.
You don't think a corner store would have this many gas pumps?
No, I don't.
Or a light that was, in your language, a beacon?
No.
Did you look at the lighting plan for the proposed development?
I didn't. I saw the site plan, but I didn't see the lighting plan.
Okay. So you can't really say how much it might have an impact, for example, on direct abutters, or do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I have seen other seasons, and the lighting is conspicuous, as you would want if you had a business. You would want the lighting to be conspicuous.
And is that in keeping with the existing neighborhood uses?
No,
Why not?
because it will impose on the abutters specifically.
Could it impose on the butters' ability to enjoy their outdoor space at night?
I believe so.
Could it impose on their ability to have quiet, day or night?
I believe so.
And could it impact a potential buyer's perceived value of a property, this proposed development?
I believe so.
Let me just have a moment, Madam Chair. Now, you've been testifying tonight that these special use permits, if granted, would have impact on the neighborhood around the development, right?
Correct.
How would you describe the Tiverton community? You said some things about visual characters and other qualities, but you talked about unique character. Would you describe our community as rural in character?
Yes.
Why is that? What makes it that way, from a real estate point of view?
Well, you have larger house lots, whereas in communities like Newport, you have zones that are like R3, R10, R20. Well, not many R20s, but in Tiverton, you have like, R30, R40, R60. So much larger parcels of land, which gives them, more privacy to their neighbors.
You also testified specifically about a portion of the neighborhood that I want to get some more information from you about, and that's the Schooner Drive and Condo Village at Mount Hope Bay.
Yes,
You went to that site?
I did.
How many times?
Probably 3 or 4.
Is there anything unique about that community that could be impacted if this development were allowed?
Well, it is a 55 and older community, so the people who'd be living there would be, reflect that age group.
And how would they be impacted?
Well, without disparaging anyone, our reflexes and vision and things like that are maybe not as great as the population at large.
And what would that, how would that translate into everyday
Well,
life?
trying to get out on Main Road.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be a factor.
After the medication.
Now, Mr. Houle said that the values in this area had already been impacted because I'm now talking about the residential, the impact on residential properties had already been factored in because of its proximity to the general commercial zone. Do you agree with that?
In this specific case, No.
Why not? What distinction do you make, or why do you disagree with Mr. Hoole's conclusion?
Well, I think that people could anticipate uses that would be allowed by right. But it's difficult to anticipate uses that require a special exception or variance. So if you were moving into a neighborhood and you knew that across the street was zoned, general commercial, you might look at the zoning book and say, oh, okay, I can live with this, and so on. But you may not plan on seeing something that requires relief, because that would not be something that you could rely on, in my opinion.
In your opinion, are you able to tell us tonight, state all of these opinions, all of your conclusions, with a reasonable degree of professional certainty,
Yes,
based on all of those visits and reports and testimony that you heard?
yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you had looked at and incorporated into some of your conclusions the so-called Hendricks data. Is that right?
Yes.
Would this be the kind of information that real estate brokers would normally rely on?
Well, normally you wouldn't have a report like that. This is unusual to have a report of that level of specificity.
Can I just, I have a question. Was that information the Chinese study?
Yes. It was submitted and there's an
We're
objection.
trying to get this in one way or another, aren't we?
Normally, a real estate agent wouldn't have access to that level of report. I
May
mean,
I?
if they had it, they'd use it, but that would be unusual.
May I inquire, Madam Chair?
Quite frankly, I don't understand how a study about rural China has any relevance to this.
Let me inquire and see if I can link it up.
Madam Chair, you may recall that the Hendricks report doesn't even rely on actual valuations. It relies on reports of
They were
general
anecdotal, right?
circumstances. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really, maybe it helps me because it's so uncredible, but I just think it's a waste of time. It's really not relevant, and he can't base any conclusions on it. But I don't want to aggravate you by objecting. I just don't think it's relevant.
I only have 4 or 5 questions about what's in there and what's not, and I'll stop.
But I don't understand how this is in any way relevant. You don't know anything about the Chinese study.
Well, it isn't a Chinese study. Let me ask just 2 or 3 questions, and I'll be done. Is it fair to say that this report gathers information from the public resource called Zillow?
Yes,
Okay. And part of the report is to quantify the number of residential properties that are in this neighborhood.
yes,
And it also tells us the number of commercial uses that are in the neighborhood.
yes.
So it's data. Is that fair to say?
I would call it data.
Okay. And what is your opinion of the resource known as Zillow?
It's an algorithm, and sometimes it's accurate, and sometimes it's not as accurate.
With regard to value of properties?
Sometimes it's accurate.
Okay. So that's all I have, Madam Chair, that it tells us if there's something we want to know about the makeup of the community. Is that fair to say, Mr. Toback?
Yes,
And it does that in a series of rings that are distances from the proposed development.
that's true, yes.
Those are the only questions I have regarding that report. Now, you said, Mr. Toback, that you observed multiple hearings. And I wonder, did you also hear the neighbors and members of the community testifying?
I did.
And what, if anything, did you conclude about that testimony?
Well, the neighbors were clearly not in favor of the added special exceptions that would exacerbate the use that's permitted.
Did they have any knowledge of the neighborhood's nuances or uses?
Oh, yes, they're very familiar with the nuances of the neighborhood.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
I have a couple of follow-up questions.
I could wait if you want to go. Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, did you want to ask the witness a
Yeah,
question?
but I'm just saying I could go after.
Well, you can ask it now if you want.
So I have a question that came up a couple times in these hearings. Did you have a chance to go around town to compare big company standalone stores that operate in town already and compare to their value around town rather than Zillow somewhere in China? Locally, we have standalone stores, we have gas stations on corners that are really, and standalone stores from one of the biggest company in the country. So, and it's been there for, God, 30 years. And houses around it existed, it's sold. Did you get a chance to do that, or that you didn't expand around town to do
No,
anything?
I am familiar with Tiverton. I've sold residential and commercial properties over the years. So I'm familiar with the Stafford Road area that you're referring to, in Booger Marsh Road and
Main Road.
Main Road, of course. I actually, years ago, sold Little Bear for Huck Little.
I wish you didn't sell it.
Well, it turned out his granddaughter's operating it now as a daycare. But no, I'm very familiar with Tiverton. Not as much as Jennifer, if I might add, but I'm very familiar with it.
My specific question has regard to Cumberland Farm, which is
Yes.
the applicant has mentioned it in the beginning of these applications.
Sure.
It is a big company, standalone store that is very successful, doesn't have the lights, the drive-through, the pumps, all that. And they've been there, I've been in town on the gas station across from them 35 years ago. So they've been there a lot more than that. And I think, my question to you never took the value, the real estate value around the area comparing to, let's say, Stafford Road with the gas stations and light and all that.
No, I did not. Yeah.
Sure.
You indicated that there are a number of impacts resulting from this project. In your opinion, well, how do I put this? We expect a certain number of impacts with any project.
Sure.
And this board has to decide whether the impact is unacceptable or it is acceptable. And it isn't clear to me how you're assessing the impact. Now, what you did say was that approved uses are okay. Is that right?
Well, I said that a neighbor could anticipate what they might encounter by looking at the zoning and looking at what is permitted in a particular zone.
But
What's
isn't this project permitted in this zone?
the convenience store is. It's the special exceptions that someone might not have
Yeah, but that's
anticipated.
permitted as well.
They're in the chart, it just has a SP next to
Right.
it, yeah.
With the
It just
special,
means you have to have another permit.
that's
There
correct.
are a lot of permits. that-
But you
and
can't do it by right. But yes, you're right, it is permitted.
So the fact that a use is permitted, if a use is acceptable and if approved uses are acceptable, then isn't Seasons also approved?
Well,
mean,
once
that's the
again,
logic, right?
I mean, the special exceptions are there for a reason. I remember Jim saying that the.
Well, you said
I'm
that
sorry.
the impact was acceptable because it was an approved use,
Well, the convenience store would be, yes.
but so isn't the gas station.
No, it's
Well,
not.
that requires the special exception, so
Yeah,
that,
but it's still an approved use.
you could look at it that way, sure. I agree that, something that requires a special exception could be considered a permitted use.
So what we're doing here, David, is if it's permitted used. What are we meeting all these meetings for?
Because you need it's like building a house.
It's not permitted, this in front of us.
Hold on, one at a time.
It's like building a house, George. You can buy property and you have the right to build, but you still have to have permits.
discussion directly with that, I don't think.
What?
I can reply to him?
No, I don't think this is appropriate. We can discuss this later.
Yeah, this is what deliberations are about.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we have been told that the property values have already been impacted by commercial uses in the area. And therefore, putting a seasons in isn't going to significantly impact the value of the properties, right? Isn't that what they said?
That's what they said, yes. He said that it
What's
was
the rule?
already accounted for.
Right.
That the value of the residential properties were already diminished
Right.
by the fact that they abutted a general commercial use. That was what he
And
said.
in particular, general commercial use.
Yes, specifically, Jim said that the values were already diminished by the fact that they abut or in proximity
Okay, so
to
are
a
you
general
now
commercial.
saying that
Why are you
this-
interrupting him?
Excuse me?
I'm
Excuse
interrupting
me.
in the same way that he is. I just don't understand why he's constantly interrupting us.
I'm in charge of I'm the monitor here, not you. Okay? So do not have any outbursts, do not voice your opinion. I'm gonna run the meeting the way I think it should be run, okay?
Just one at a time, please. Let the witness finish his answer, then you can ask a follow-up question.
Well, I think, once again, it goes back to the cumulative effect of the special exceptions that we talked about earlier, which was that if you had one special exception, that would have an effect. And if you have two special exceptions, that would have a greater effect. And if you have three special exceptions, that will have even a greater effect. That was what I had said previously.
Okay. I have to think of how. The petitioner has said that the value of the property has already been decreased because of the proximity to the special uses.
Well, the general commercial was what he had said.
I'm sorry.
trouble hearing.
Yeah, I really wish people in the audience would keep their opinions to themselves. We're trying to create a record. The stenographer can't concentrate.
Sure.
Voices are coming from all different directions.
To clarify.
The record reflects that Mr. Shover has appeared as an alternate. Thank you.
I believe what Jim said was that the value of the houses in that neighborhood had already been adversely diminished by the fact of their proximity to the general commercial zone, and that the special exceptions would not further diminish their value. And that's what I disagreed with.
Is it the fact that a special use is they're in proximity to a special use, or is it the use?
I think it's both. I think the closer you are, I hate to refer to the Hendricks report, but I think the closer you are to the use, the more impact it has, and it's also the use. Specifically, the gas pumps are almost
He
a
actually.
light industrial almost use, I'm sorry. And of course, the added traffic that comes from, because I think some people are going to go specifically for gas, and some people will go there to pick up a lottery ticket. Some people will go there to get a cup of coffee. So I think when you add it all together, you have more traffic.
So the impact will increase if they put beyond it's already degraded to, if a gas station is put in place. Is that what you,
Yes.
and how do we evaluate that?
Well, that's the thing. How do you quantify
That's
it?
our problem.
I completely agree with you. I don't know how you quantify it. It's, how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube? The decision that's going to be made, stay tuned. We'll find out. And I don't mean to be frivolous, but I'm
No, you're
saying.
right, and we recognize that that's
Yeah.
the problem. All right, I'm all set.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Yes.
The question I asked earlier probably follows to David. If we here to really just build a store, then we'll all be home and we'll be done a long time ago. The fact is, it's our job to see if this project or any project comes to town have an impact on the neighbor, adversely affect the town and the neighbors. That is our job. It's permitted for. So my question was to you earlier, is as an expert in real estate, convenience store standalone does not have the same adverse effect as somebody puts a pumps, drive-through, lights. It doesn't have to take a genius to know it will diminish the value automatically when you start adding this stuff in. I'm in the business, and I know how it affects it. You should know, everybody knows that you add all these lights, there's an issue there. It's our job to decide if it works or not. Simple. It's admitted for commercial.
I
So
think
my question
Bob
to you, does it
Dylan
affect
phrased
it?
it, that you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. I think that's what you might be saying.
I just want to have one clarifying question of this witness. Do you recall what Mr. Hool said about the diminished property values specifically?
Well, what
Did he
he's...
use a number, for example?
No, there wasn't a number.
Did he take in the entire neighborhood or just Main Road when he drew his conclusions? Do you recall?
I believe he was referring to the neighborhood.
If I were to suggest to you that he did not include Sousa Road, would that refresh your memory?
No.
Okay.
I hate to say it, but I don't remember him referring to Sousa Road. Well,
He didn't-
actually, I'm trying to think. Something, I think he may have referred to Sousa Road, actually.
Thank you. I
trying
have
to
nothing
remember.
else.
I'm not 100% sure.
That's okay. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. Mr. Toback, Christopher DeVideo, I represent Tracy Hayward. She lives within 200 feet on Sousa Road, just off of Main Road. Okay? And so you've indicated that you sell homes and residential and commercial properties, correct?
Yes.
And so, with respect to buyers of residential homes, I imagine you deal with buyers with different wealth backgrounds.
Sure.
And so there are a lot of buyers who are buying maybe a residential property, particularly in this area, that might be their greatest investment that they've made in life.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Ms. Benson mentioned earlier about the public's welfare. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And do you recall in the testimony of Mr. Hool, there was a discussion about the public's welfare?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've indicated this project will negatively affect the value of the residential properties in the immediate surrounding area of this proposed project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So is it safe to say that a diminished property value is not in furtherance of a person's welfare?
Yes.
Okay. And one last question. So I asked Mr. Hool, and well, first you've discussed how you've visited the site and directly west of this property is a residential property by the owners of the Monies. Okay, they're directly across the street from Main Road. Are you familiar with that residential property?
Yes.
And so it is likely, at least as I'll ask you, if you're in that residential property looking eastward, what would you be looking at?
We'd be looking at the seasons.
Okay. And so I asked Mr. Hool about that lighting that's generated from the seasons and how that might affect how he would advertise, for example, the Money's home in an MLS listing. So I'll ask you the same question. Would you, if you were listing the Money's house for sale, would you identify as a selling benefit a view of the Seasons facility?
I would not.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sullivan? Do you have a question?
A quick one.
Okay.
If this wasn't Seasons, it was some other gas station or project, would the lighting impact be the same or different?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question, because I would think that Cumberland Farms has a different type of configuration than Seasons does, so I don't know how to compare it. I presume they'd be similar, but I don't think anyone is being prejudiced towards Seasons. I would hope not anyways. I think it's the use, not Colbia or Cumberland Farms. But I do believe that probably every business has a model that probably is consistent. Like if you go to an IHOP, I mean, they have a certain physical structure you drive, or McDonald's, they have arches. I mean, it's different than Burger King. So to answer your question, I don't know the answer to it.
So in reaching your conclusion, you must have assumed that some level of light was unacceptable?
The concern was I think they used the word like overflow or something to that effect, where it's difficult to contain the lighting to the site. And you would think that if someone were having a business and cars were coming from either direction, that you would want them to know that your business was there. You want to attract them to your business. So I think that the lighting is something that would be integral to a successful business.
So when you say lighting, do you mean signage?
The part of it, yeah, I think the canopy also would have lighting.
But isn't the canopy for lighting the cars at night that are filling?
Yes.
And people walking around?
Sure, yeah.
And how do we determine how much is acceptable and how much is not?
That's the question.
Well, you're the one who made the opinion that...
Well, the concern was that it was one of the three special exceptions, and what I was saying was that each one has some effect, and I couldn't quantify what each one specifically affect. What I was saying was that 2 special exceptions is greater than 1, and 3 special exceptions is greater than 2.
So if they have 3 special exceptions, they're going to have more light than if they have 2?
No, the lighting is unique to itself. And actually, I looked at the site plan, and I could see where the canopy was, and I could imagine what it would look like for safety purposes and illuminating at night while you're filling up your gas tank. But I didn't remember seeing anything that had to do with their signage.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
You understand that the board can grant or not grant the special use permit, and that in the event we can control the incompatibility, if you want to say that, by putting restrictions on when the lights can be on and when they, you know, what we're going to allow in terms of lighting. So you really can't say if the lights are not all approved, that this is going to, you know, how can you testify to the fact that it's,
I can't.
you know, you really.
I agree. I mean, I remember Mr. Stolzman saying that the lights wouldn't be on when they weren't open. So, I mean, that's obviously a concession.
And there can be restrictions on when the restaurant, when the drive-through is going to be open.
So, yeah, you can
And that
put
would
restrictions,
reduce-
sure,
And that
sure.
would reduce the incompatibility.
Sure, you can put restrictions on it, absolutely.
So you can't just say,
I can't quantify
You
it.
can't.
And I wouldn't even want to imply that I could.
Right.
I'd be, yeah, I can't. Thank you.
okay, Mr. Sullivan?
If I may, my questions are along a similar vein. I just want to make sure we're clear that we understand what we're talking about the impact. So let's unpack the cumulative effect.
Sure.
Purpose a little bit more. Can you tell us where the drive-through, the one drive-through window is located on the site?
Yeah, it would be to the north of the building.
Yeah, and so what impact does that, in your opinion, what cumulative impact does that drive-through create?
Well, there was another lane there for the traffic, so you had like 2 lanes to the north of the Seasons. And it would exacerbate the amount of traffic in that specific area. But I'm not a traffic person. And,
Right, okay,
you
and
know,
I was
you
going to ask,
brought that up before.
but not only the traffic,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, not only, I apologize for interrupting. Not only the traffic in and out of the site, but did you review the testimony of Mr. Simpson or of the applicant's testimony with respect to site plan design on the number of trips generated by the drive-through?
Well, I was there for the 2 traffic engineers. I can't remember. I think Mr. Simpson was the first one.
Mr. Simpson was a environmental.
Oh, no, I wasn't there for Mr. Simpson.
Okay. So would you agree that the location of the drive-through in terms of impact on the neighbors, whether you could see it, other than traffic, are there any other impacts that you would have other than the cars?
I mean, my opinion would just be that it would increase the amount of vehicular activity, but that's kind of a traffic question.
Yeah, and you're aware that all drive-throughs in the town require a special use permit?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And what typically, why would a town impose a special use permit condition on a use like that? Would that be in order, wouldn't it be in order to say where is it located on the site? What impacts does it have? Those types of things, so the town could
I think
impose
the word
conditions and
impact
restrictions?
would be appropriate.
Okay.
I mean, I
sorry,
can, I'm sorry.
Kind of overlapped, sorry.
What was that?
You kind of overlapped.
You're right, I did, I'm sorry. I didn't let you finish.
No, no.
My enthusiasm got the better of me, I apologize. I guess the question was, you know, how would it impact the neighbors having the drive-through window? And I can visualize, you know, the added activity based on other businesses that have drive-through windows where it increases the amount of activity. I'm not gonna, I didn't want to use the word traffic,
All right, but-
so
but-
I'm using the word activity.
All right, so have you had a chance to review the testimony from the number of cars queuing, the use of the Rhode Island Department of Transportation queuing data, all that data that's in the record? Have you had a chance to review that?
I didn't review it, but I remember hearing people allude to it, but I didn't review it.
Okay.
No.
All right, now, the second special use permit being requested with respect to signage. Do you know, and could you describe for us what signage relief is being requested?
No.
All right. So if I were to tell you that if the signage impact were limited to the front yard exception, because all deviations from the ordinance in Tiverton require a special use permit for signage. If I were to tell you that the main relief was to the location of the monument sign in the front to accommodate the particularly wide right-of-way over the easements and distance from the pavement, would you consider that a negative impact?
I didn't see on the site plan, I didn't see the information specific to the sign.
Okay.
So I don't feel qualified to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. So the whole basket of cumulative impact of the second special use permit signage, you haven't had a chance really to look at the signage plan that's been submitted, the discussion about, of the 12 signs, 9 are by right, and 2 are just small directional type welcome signs, and the big one is the monument sign. You didn't have a chance to look at that?
I did not.
Okay. So now I'll move on to the lighting, which is part of the whole intensification of the permitted use discussion. Are you familiar with the whole schooling I got from Mr. Alzabak on the chain stores' ability to get waivers on lighting?
No, I didn't.
All right, so if I were to tell you that there's no internally illuminated lighting, the canopy lighting will be as this board directs, and we'll have to get waivers from Shell on that. Would that impact your conclusion as to the cumulative impact of the lighting as a result of the fueling station?
It might.
All right. The notion that Tiverton is rural in character, does that apply to the entire town pursuant to the comprehensive plan?
No, not the entire town.
And under the comprehensive plan, where does the commercial corridor on Main Road start?
Well, it would start right about where, it depends which direction you're coming from, but if you were coming from 24, it would start just about, where the junction of 24 and Main Road is.
Okay. If I were to tell you it actually starts at Sousa Road north, with that, with a little bit north of your
Sure,
point.
sure. I was just thinking of the nursing home, which used to be the Coachman restaurant, so that's why I thought maybe it started a little closer.
Okay.
But-
So I think, and I'll wrap this up then with just this. It seems to me that the negative impact on the neighborhood from these special use permits really depends on the special use permit being applied for and the conditions the board puts on it. Doesn't it boil down to that?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
I got to follow up something he just opened the door for. Can I do that? So, Mr. Spokesman just started something about the drive-through, and me and him had back and forth about the location of the gas tanks. In your opinion, if the drive-through did not exist, the original plan we got from them, the first plan, the gas tanks and the delivery would impact the traffic where it's at right now, was to the left of the site if you're looking at it. Way away from the front street, the truck pulls in up there, make the delivery and leave. The reason that moved around, because they needed to move the building to accommodate the drive-through. If the drive-through didn't exist, which is, I don't think, we'll discuss it later, but in your opinion, if the drive-through didn't exist, the traffic in the parking lot, the traffic coming in and out, the delivery would have been a lot more, less cumbersome to the neighbors, less cumbersome to the parking lot, less traffic in and out, less traffic on Main Road. If that drive-through wasn't exist, the delivery to the right of the building, the truck is not parked right in front. And I always said that in these meetings, during a storm, not a 90-day degrees like today. You got to look at it, we live in New England. Days before the storm, these deliveries problem. In your opinion, if that drive-through was not there and the building back where it was originally with the plan we got, and the gas tank originally with the plan we got, it's a different impact on the neighborhood than it is right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
One follow-up. Mr. Kovac. As the chair appropriately noted, the board can impose different restrictions, and those restrictions could be in furtherance of mitigating negative impacts to the community. And one board member indicated that if the drive-through wasn't there, it would lessen the traffic impact, for example. Now, with respect to lighting, which was brought up by the applicant's counsel and even mentioned by the chair, you testified earlier that you need to have some type of signage so that as people are traveling to either direction towards this, the operator wants to have some level of lighting and signage to know that it exists. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of what the chair suggested, that maybe you limit the hours of operation for the drive-through, that might be helpful, as you've indicated, in terms of traffic. Is that correct?
Yes.
In terms of the canopy and lighting, right now, it's 4:30, it gets dark. Do you envision a board imposing a restriction that would limit the overhead awning lighting to be shut off at 4:30, as soon as it gets dark?
No.
Okay. So I think there's been testimony that this facility is going to be open, I think, or not open from maybe 12 to 7. Is that fairly accurate, Mr. Stoltzman?
I'd have to refresh my memory, I believe that's about
midnight, they've asked.
5 a.m. to midnight.
5 a.m., so from midnight to 5 a.m., they anticipate being open. Certainly, the board could restrict even those hours of operation.
Hold on. Hold on. This is not a shooting gallery where you guys get to shout out. Let him ask the question, the chair can ask the follow-up question. We're trying to build a record. You're not helping us build a record by you shouting out.
So,
Sorry.
yeah. So they're not open 5 a.m., well, after midnight, as I understand it, they're not going to be open. Okay, but before midnight, certainly the board could restrict, even make them close earlier. But again, as we now have had daylight savings, I think it is, but we fall back, it gets dark at 4:30, again, I'll ask you, you don't envision the zoning board would require that those gas pumps be shut off at 4:30, therefore the lights would be shut off at 4:30?
No.
Okay, that's all I have.
Madam Chair, may I have one more recross question, please? I don't want us to get too confused over this. Mr. Toback, wouldn't any store have lighting?
Yes.
And any commercial use would have likely some lighting?
Yes.
All right, and you just testified in your direct and on my cross that the intensity of the lighting would depend on the specific project, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, let me just, did you have a chance to look at the lighting plans and the lighting calculations Mr. Simpson provided the board with the lumens and the shadow study and all that? Did you have a chance to look at any
No,
of that?
I didn't.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question. When doing a market analysis on properties that are adjacent to commercial, are you looking at their store hours when you're doing a market analysis, or is it just kind of a generalized?
Generalized. I mean, what I do is, when I'm doing comparative market analysis, ideally, you're looking for houses that are in geographical proximity to the subject property that you're doing your analysis on. And, you know, if you don't have the recent sales, then you have to go out further, as you remember. And you'll see that, you know, certain neighborhoods in that general area will have different, values. And so you try to take that into consideration.
Sure.
A lot of it is subjective.
Exactly.
I'll certainly say that. When you're doing a market analysis, there's certainly a degree of subjectivity. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question to Jennifer. Can I ask? I had a back and forth question with Mr. Hool because I disagreed about the way he did the evaluation that's already existed and whatever. And I said to him, when you looked at this other project with Season, did you look at a station they just built or a station pre-existing and turned to Season? And his answer to me, well, mostly gas stations were there, turned into a Season. In your opinion, that doesn't have the same effect of bringing a gas station and drop it at a spot.
Well, it's kind of interesting because Jim lived on Lee Avenue, and there was Metrod's gas station over there on the corner of Thames Street and Lee Avenue, and it's now a Seasons. Now, the other one that he was referring to was on the corner of Union Street and West Main Road, and coincidentally, Jim lives on Union Street. So it's just amazing that he would live on two streets that would have gas stations on the corner. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But the one on the corner of Lee Avenue was formerly Metrod's gas station.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You were referring to the villages,
Yes, Mount Hope Bay.
and those properties are significantly downhill from the
grade.
proposed, from the proposed site. And the condos face the water, do they
They
not?
do. The orientation is to the west.
So you indicated that this would have an impact on that neighborhood. How would that happen?
Well, predominantly their ability to access and egress their location, having to come out on Main Road, was what I was referring to.
Well, I mean, there's a restaurant down there, those people.
The Boathouse, great place.
Yeah, it is a great place.
I had the fish and chips there. It's very good.
But, other than, there's traffic going there now.
Yes.
And so I just don't understand how they're impacted.
Well, it was the traffic. It was access and egress from Schooner Drive. That's what I was referring to.
And how would the fact that the gas station is on the opposite corner?
Well, it was, once again, going back to the amount of traffic on a two-lane road, where you already have school buses and things like that, and it's exacerbated by the added uses of having the Seasons with the gas pumps
But
and the
again,
drive-up window.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I'm guilty. So, if it were a convenience store, people would be going in and out of that place.
And that's a permitted use.
Right. So how do we draw the line?
It's how do you quantify
Yeah.
the increase? I mean, I think,
It's sort of
it almost
speculative.
makes, kind of, I don't want to denigrate anyone by saying this, but, I mean, the more uses you have, the more business you're going to do, and there's synergies between these. I mean, if you're getting gas, maybe you'll decide, I want to have a bagel and a coffee. Maybe I want to run in, some people still get newspapers. I do. Or maybe they want to get a lottery ticket, so the more things you have, the more activity you're going to have.
But a
And-
person could get out of his car and go in and get a cup of coffee.
Sure.
At a convenience store,
Yeah,
without the drive-through.
they could, absolutely.
Okay.
But I mean, it's interesting because they wouldn't put up drive-throughs if it didn't generate more business. Recently, and I digress, in Middletown, there's a Starbucks, and it was an end cap, but it didn't have a drive-through. And now they built a freestanding one, and I would go to that Citizens Bank branch, and I don't go there anymore, because it is pandemonium, where the people park in the Citizens parking lot, and then you have to back out, and there are people coming to get their coffee, and that drive-through window at Starbucks is doing, what would you call it, blockbuster business. And, clearly people have a preference for drive-throughs. And I actually read an article once, and once again, I digress, that the places like the fast food places actually give priority to the drive-throughs. So if you walk into a Burger King and you're standing in line there, you're not going to be serviced as quickly as the people who go through the drive-through. That's their marching orders.
And I have a follow-up question to your question.
So the fact is that if you're in a hurry, you'll go to the drive-through and you'll get better service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the traffic study, gentleman, what's his name? I can't remember what it is. And we talked about the fact, I understand if you put a convenience store, people have a traffic, but if you put a gas pump, you'll get more. The more you put added selling point, profit centers, it'll get busier.
Sure.
And I had said to him, the problems coming into or out of that area is, right now, all we're doing is putting a line in the middle of the road for people to cross. With all due respect, going down that speed, me and him had that discussion back and forth, had gotten a lot faster. People driving a lot faster, they're not paying attention. They don't even pay attention to anything. And we discussed about putting probably, what do you think of stoplight? In your opinion, if a stoplight ever existed over there, does that take away from your concern about the value of the property, the Modern Hope, or anything else?
I don't think a
I
stoplight
just
would
wanna do
diminish,
that.
yeah, no. I mean, actually, some people might welcome a stoplight to, they know they could come out and go in.
Madam Chair, may I ask one more follow-up question based on the analogy? Since you used the Starbucks as a comparable, but roughly how many square feet would you guess the standalone Starbucks is?
Well, I believe, I would say it's probably between 3,000 and 4,000 comparable size to the Seasons.
3,000 and 4,000 square feet?
Right.
Yeah, so and do you recall from your review of the site plan, the square footage of the cafe serving area?
I do, but I don't remember.
If I told you it
right
was
now.
300 square feet?
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
I remembered
okay.
it started with a 3, and I wasn't sure if it was
Okay.
300 or 350.
So,
But I,
and you recall, and you did review Mr. Shevlin, the first traffic engineer's testimony. Do you recall how his analysis of all drive-throughs are not created equal? Some are conveniences and some are major parts of the business, like a standalone drive-through for a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts compared to a small cafe?
I would agree with that, but I don't remember it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any member of the audience have any questions for the witness? This is just for questions, okay?
For questions?
Yes.
My name is Babak Khosropur, Babak Khosropur. I'm at 15 Leeshore Lane in Tiverton, at the village at Mount Hope Bay. I own one of 217 homes there. Mr. Toback, if I was your son, my name would be Babak Toback. So just throw that out.
It'd probably get beat up a lot.
So I just have two questions. One was regarding what you were talking about, traffic. Is it correct that you made a point, and if I heard correctly, I think it was a good point, that the people who live at the village of Mount Hope Bay are a minimum of 55 years old? And that is true. I'm 73 years old, and I'm probably average there. I don't think my hand-eye reflection coordination is good. Was that your point, is that in addition to the traffic, we do have 350 people who live down the hill who have only one way of getting out? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, I thank you. My second and last question, I have to give you just a few facts and then I can ask you a question. The fact is that 14 years ago, I chose to move here to work in Pawtucket from New York, and I asked my realtor to find me something that was not in a congested area, not Providence, not there, and I don't mind driving a distance, which is about 45 minutes. Now, you are a realtor, presumably a conscientious and ethical realtor, and if this was my request of you, would you find me a place whose boundary was 570 feet from a Seasons on a two-lane road?
No, I wouldn't.
Thank you very much.
Come on up.
I've been sitting too long. I don't know how you guys do it. My name is Jim Forrest. My wife and I live in the Villages, close to Bob, and we lived there for 11 years. We moved down here from a Massachusetts community to, first of all, be in a nice, quiet, wonderful area, and also have a water view. And we've got that. It's a fantastic place to live. Now, my question for you folks is, I'm a retired CPA. Did that thing for 40 years. I'm used to running numbers, being around numbers. I'm curious if you have seen the long-term projections that Seasons has developed for the activity, the volume that is going to be going through that store. Because right now, I've heard that it's not going to, this may not be true, I've heard that the volume is not going to increase dramatically. But this is a gas station. It's a low-margin business. They have to generate volume and more volume. And being a large company, they have developed plans that show exactly how much they expect by year, or through a 5-year period. I'm curious if you folks have seen those projections and absorbed them on what they expect to have volume going through.
I can't answer it. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. I thought you were going to ask the witness a question.
I haven't seen it either.
Okay, my bad. I thought a question, I just took it in general. So that is my question to the witness or whomever else. I would love to see the long-term projections of what they expect volume to go through that little area. And it's not what the volume they have now, because they could not justify a store based upon that volume. And they know
Madam
it.
Chair, I just want to remind the board, we have provided all kinds of projections in terms of use of the facility. Financial projections are not part of the special use permit
No.
application process. And as a CPA, I assume that's the type of projections you're looking at, are revenue projections. That's not part of this whole process.
I would like to, if I were.
We have provided volume projections, traffic volume projections, use projections. We have provided that information. It's in the record.
Forgive me, I forgot.
You'll see it again.
Okay, if I were king for a day, I would love to see those projections. And I would ask our witnesses, what, based upon their projections, what is this corner going to look like in 5 or 10 years versus the way it is now? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions?
Could I have her name?
Jim Forrest, F-O-R-R-E-S-T.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm 74.
Thank you.
Guess you're qualified to live there then.
Carol Herman. I have a question relating to usages permitted by right, such as the convenience store, versus usages that require a special use permit. Would you agree that usages requiring a special use permit are segregated out to require a higher level of scrutiny because they are more likely to have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood?
Well, I think the general question is the scrutiny, which is why there is a zoning board of appeal that's, reviewing it. So I guess the added layer of scrutiny is, is pretty obvious. What was the second part of it?
And the reason why, say, a gas station requires a higher level of scrutiny than a standalone convenience store is because when that ordinance was written, it was decided that a gas station could have a much more negative effect, would not fit in as well into many neighborhoods as a convenience store.
Well, it will have an effect. I don't know that I could quantify again the degree of the effect, but.
But it would be
but-
negative?
But, as I mentioned earlier, when you have a special exception, it will have an effect. And if you have two exceptions, it'll be more than one, and three is more than two. So, now, which of the special exceptions might be the more offensive is really going to be up to the zoning board to decide which ones, if any, they're willing to give relief to. But the scrutiny is right here. This is the scrutiny.
My house is located 300 feet south of the proposed corner lot on Main Road. It's a historic home built in 1902. It's located on 3 acres. It abuts the historic district, and the boundaries are marked by stone walls. Would you consider my home on that property to be rural?
The definition of rural might be, different people might have different descriptions. Certainly being on 3 acres of land and having been built in 1902 would distinguish it from houses that are built in a subdivision. Maybe if I were marketing the property, maybe I would say rural, but, someone might say that I didn't represent it correctly. They might say that it's on Main Road. How can I call it rural?
Would you say that this Seasons is compatible with my home and property?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that, a Seasons typically would be compatible in an area that's zoned for, and if it were just a convenience store, it wouldn't be as incompatible. But I think when you add in the extra layer of gas pumps and canopies and, drive-through windows for fast food and additional lighting that might be associated with it, that, it isn't as compatible as something that's a less intensive use. The analogy of the antique store might be a good analogy because that's kind of a thing that might actually kind of complement a 1902 house.
And to pick up what Mr. Dovidio said, if you are marketing my home to potential buyers and listing its selling points, historic home on 3 acres.
Sure.
Would
Stone
you,
walls.
right, 100-year-old trees. Would you add, and better yet, there's a Seasons within view?
No, I wouldn't include that.
Thank you.
Interesting, I remember someone who once in Newport, there was a Chinese restaurant that was called the Canton, and this particular agent was kind of tongue-in-cheek, put in the thing that it was in Newport's Chinatown district, I mean, totally socially inappropriate, but no, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, anyone else have any questions?
May I ask a
Oh, yes.
question first? Getting back to compatibility, if this project existed and they changed the name from Seasons to some other name, would it be more or less compatible?
I don't think the name, that old expression, a rose by any other name smells just as sweet. I don't know that if you called it Seasons or Cumberland Farms or 7-Eleven, if it would make really any difference, in my opinion. I mean, it's only my opinion, but I don't think that changing the name would make a difference.
Are you saying that this project, regardless of what the name is, should not be there?
Well, it's not the project, it's the special exceptions that you as a board are going to determine. If you feel that the special exceptions are acceptable, you'll approve them. And if you feel that they're not because they diminish the quality of life of the neighbors and abutters, you'll decline it, I presume.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone, do you have a question?
John Fernandez, 1049 Main Road, approximately 30 feet away from the proposed seasons.
You're gonna have to speak into the microphone.
I had a question. Being that where this proposed seasons is going, this is pretty much a 100% residential area currently until maybe seasons goes in. But with the build of Sousa Road and the current homes around there, there is an issue that could possibly arise with FHA housing insurance. Would you believe that the housing FHA could deny somebody a loan or housing insurance because of any issue that this proposed season would bring to the neighborhood?
Well, I'd have to say that I think a mortgage originator would be more qualified to answer that question as far as what the FHA criteria would be. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
Because, all right. And then my other question would be, the gas station that Seasons says is similar to Seasons going in Tiverton in Portsmouth on Union Street, the petroleum gas station. I've been to that gas station. I'm having a little problem with the comparisons. Is that gas station is on 15 acres of land?
I'm not sure how much acreage it's on. I'd be surprised if it was 15 acres, but I think it also kind of abuts a reservoir, so there might be more land there to kind of insulate it from affecting the water source. So I think there was something specific about that parcel.
To the left of the property, there is water tanks in a reservoir.
Right, that belongs to the Newport
Right.
Water Department. And so I think that on that corner, there were some very specific details that were related to the reservoir. So it may be a larger parcel so that they could have that buffer zone.
And would you consider that gas station similar to the one that's going to be in Tiverton? There's a number of, I'll give you the list of differences that I found with that gas station. One, it's on a 4-lane road, meaning 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. There's also a light there, which is different than the proposed gas station that Season would like to put in Tiverton. Also, in that area, it's not all residential. Along with the reservoir, to the left of the property, if you're facing it, and back of it is a power plant. So that gas station is not in a completely residential neighborhood where Seasons is. It's more in a business environment compared to where this one would be. And it is on 15 acres of land. I pulled it up when I went out there.
I think it also has a car wash.
Yes, it does. So I was just wondering on how they made that a comparison, because there's actually more differences in the property than similarities.
I don't think he can answer that question.
I thought he was the, sorry.
Well, I
thought
mean,
he was
you know,
real estate.
certainly there would be differences. I mean, 15 acres being abutting a reservoir, being at a light, I mean, you know, having a car wash. I mean, there'd be a lot of differences.
A power plant.
I don't know if
In
it's
the
a
back of
power
the
plant. It might
property.
be it's a small little structure. I don't know what they would call it.
But that would be a big difference, right? That business is not completely surrounded by residential homes where the one in Tiverton would be. And also the issue with traffic, they have a traffic light there and 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction. So there's a light there to control stops, and there's also 2 lanes of traffic in each direction to not congest the flow of traffic.
Well, there's definitely differences. I could certainly agree with that.
Right. I was just confused on how that was, Seasons put that on as a comparison, because
Well, that one's
it's
not a
even,
Seasons.
it's not, which I was wondering why, maybe if you could answer why they would even bring that in there. I mean, why wouldn't they use one of their own gas stations in their own portfolio? But they brought one in Portsmouth, which is not even remotely the same as what they're proposing here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that one isn't a Seasons, but it's similar to a Seasons. I mean, the same concept, except it has a car wash. But, you know, I mean, they have convenience and they have pumps and so on, but.
But to be fair, all real estate is different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer.
There's not two apples that look exactly the same, unless you go to a subdivision.
There's not, but when you're comparing 15 acres of land to 1 acre, something over a little bit over 1, there's a big difference. And when you're talking about traffic, a stoplight and 4 lanes of traffic
I see the difference.
is a huge difference in traffic. And also a residential home compared to reservoirs and a power plant is a complete difference. So those were my questions, and either somebody could answer to if there would be with the proposal of the residential development that's going in on Sousa Road, if people are going to have a problem obtaining housing insurance through FHA, or if they could be shut off from any number of safety issues or whatever they want to deny people for housing.
That's a question not for this board, nor for the
Nor for the witness.
nor for the witness.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Gary Leib, L-E-I-B.
Could you spell your last name, please?
L-E-I-B, 620 Old Colony Terrace. 2 quick questions pertaining to property value from the impacts. Mr. Toback, have you ever been next to a gasoline station when the delivery truck delivering the gasoline gets delivered at night?
I have seen that. Yeah, I have seen deliveries made to gas stations.
All right. I lived in a house like that across from a gas station in Bristol on Hope Street, the Serpent gas station, for 30 years, and that's one of the reasons why I moved here to Tiverton. And let me describe to you, and then I'll ask you the question about the impact on property values. Namely, the truck comes, and as it first maneuvers, it suddenly starts to back up, beep, beep, beep. 2 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock at night. And then it opens up the tank cover and clank, clank, clank. And then the whole process goes in reverse again, beep, beep, beep. Would all those noises, do you think, have an impact on the property value of the owners who have to hear that within about 100, 200, 300 feet?
Oh, I think a buyer would definitely take that into consideration.
Thank you. That's my question. Thank you.
Somebody back here.
Steve Money, 1049 Main Road, right across the street. My question is, Seasons real estate professional said the prices are baked in to what they're going to be. Now, with a vacant lot across the street, my house value, would it change if you put 3 businesses over there and increase traffic? How much would that decrease my property value?
I mean, it'd be hard to quantify, you know, I could, certainly there would be an effect, but I couldn't tell you percentage-wise or dollars-wise exactly what the effect would be.
But it's not really baked in from being a vacant lot right now. There's a price difference when you put 3 businesses on one lot.
Well, I
and add
think
traffic,
what
right?
I had said previously was, you know, there are things that you could anticipate because they're a matter of right, and there are things that are permitted but with a special exception, and there are things that require variance which are not permitted. In this particular case, the board's reviewing 3 specific details that require a special use permit, and that's going to have an effect. It'll have an effect. I can't tell you precisely. I just couldn't tell you exactly what the dollar amount's going to be, or even what percentage it's going to be.
Madam Chair, I don't want to interrupt the questioning with respect to how he would market the property, but we stipulated, I thought we stipulated, that Mr. Tovac's not an appraiser, and he's not testifying as to values. He may testify as to how he would market a property and its impact on marketability, but he's not testifying as to value.
But would there be they're saying it's already baked in, so the price of my house right now is the price, but when you add in another business, 3 businesses, wouldn't that decrease it? You wouldn't be able to market for the same price that it is now when you
Well,
add that?
There would be an effect, real estate, there's so many variables, the market in general, interest rates, supply and demand, there's so many variables, and this would be one of them. I mean, location and so on, but, real estate isn't a science. And, what impact the 3 special exceptions would have, and it occurs to me that each one is unique. In other words, the lighting versus the gas pumps versus the drive-up window, I don't think they're all equal. So people may feel that the gas pumps are more offensive than the lighting, or that the drive-up window is less offensive than the lighting. To try to determine the impact of each one specifically, once again, will be up to the board as to what they believe would be acceptable and what would have an adverse effect on the neighbors.
If you had a business over there that was just open 10 to 6 instead of 5 to midnight, would that make a big difference when you market something?
Well, I think he said it would be closed from midnight to 5 a.m. I think that's how I understood it.
Yeah, 5 to 12 would be open, 5 a.m. to midnight?
Well, it would be open, yeah, you're right, from 5 a.m. it would be open till midnight. Yes, it would be.
You had a barber
Once
shop
again,
over
I
there?
mean, how do you quantify it? I mean, if it were open 12 hours a day versus 18 hours a day or 19 hours a day, I guess 12 hours would be preferable than 19. Not every hour is exactly the same. I mean, if it were closed from, noon to 5 p.m. would be different than if it was closed from midnight to 5 a.m. I mean, these are all unique to themselves.
When you sell houses, is it harder to sell them when there's a big traffic concern?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
That's all I got to say. You guys should take a field trip and drive down there sometime.
Hi, Steve Hendrick, Hendrick. Don't you need my address too, or?
It's okay.
All right. I have just a couple of questions for Mr. Tobuck. Have you heard of an acronym called NIMBY?
Sure.
Okay. And what does that stand for?
Not in my backyard.
Okay. And would you say that there could be perceived impacts, both positive or negative, such as, from a positive standpoint, the convenience of having a gas station nearby, or another positive impact, which is you might have one-stop shopping for food and gas, for instance, or coffee, as well as negative impacts like noise pollution or light pollution or more traffic or environmental concerns or aesthetics or safety. Would you think that those kinds of issues would potentially have an impact on real estate prices nearby in a town like Tiverton?
Yes, I think it would have an impact.
Would they have an impact on a town like Newport?
Well, Newport's a city and Tiverton's a town, so I think that people who are looking, in Newport, you'll often hear people say walkability, which I don't know if you hear as much in Tiverton about walkability. Proximity to the restaurants, or plenty of places to buy T-shirts. But I think Tiverton is not, the people looking to live in Newport are not thinking also of either or Tiverton.
Okay, so would it have an impact on any rural, sort of upscale rural town, let's say in the nearby area?
I'm trying to understand the question. In other
Well, I'm trying
words,
to understand whether or not, you already mentioned that, or you said that it would have an impact in a town like Tiverton. I'm just trying to draw an analogy. Would it have an impact in towns like Tiverton, but not beyond Tiverton?
Yeah, I think, once again, going back to the comprehensive plan for the town, they talked about the unique quality of, being a small community. So I think that would be how I would describe it. People, the gentleman who moved, to the villages of Mount Hope Bay, he was looking for, something that was less congested and willing to drive to work. Didn't want to live in Providence.
Okay, thank you. Because of the significant impact that this NIMBY issue might have for people who have houses nearby a gas station, do you think that they would be interested in trying to understand more precisely what the impact of that gas station might have on their properties?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that a real estate journal that published sort of a report, a NIMBY report about the impact of gas stations on real estate prices, and this is a North American publication, even if that study was done in China, do you think that might have relevance to people in North America?
Oh, I can't answer that.
Okay, that's
you're
fine.
not gonna answer
That's
that.
fine. That's fine. All right, it's a stretch, I understand. And one last question then. So, if there was a reliable way by using advanced analytics, looking at the price of a property that was sold near a gas station, the configuration of that property, how many bedrooms and bathrooms and how big the property was, as well as its proximity to the gas station. If there was a reliable way using advanced analytics to understand what the economic impact would be that a gas station would create, this could be positive or negative, as we said, would that be useful to you as a real estate broker in terms of advising your clients?
Jennifer mentioned, if I may call you Jennifer,
Okay.
Every piece of real estate is unique to itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure that, I'm not sure I'm comfortable answering that question.
Let me just try to rephrase
Sure,
for a second.
yeah, maybe.
If a study like this was done using 600 properties, and all of those properties were woven together into an economic mathematical model, which reflected all of the vagaries of all of the properties, so that it was reliable in terms of being able to understand the impact on housing prices based on distance from a gas station, would that be useful in advising?
I
your
think that's
brokers?
more of an appraisal question.
Okay.
It's not that it isn't a good question, it's just that I think it's more suitable to an appraiser.
A lot more factors involved too.
Yeah.
Than just the
I'm sorry,
algorithm.
could you-
I'm sorry. I said there's a lot more. Can I talk? Yeah. I said there's a lot more. There's a lot more factors involved than just an algorithm too. There's buyer feeling. There's what's going on in the marketplace. There's inventory, what's on the market currently. So an algorithm's helpful.
Right, and my response to that would be, you're absolutely right, algorithms are helpful, but the sale price of the property, because this was 600 properties that actually were sold, the sale price represents many of those qualitative issues that you had identified, as well as the sort of more quantitative issues of the property size and
Sure.
distance to a gas station.
Sure. And appraised value versus sold value can differentiate as well. So it really depends on, so many factors.
Yeah.
I could add something from personal experience. The houses around my station, some of them sold cheap, other paid double, or made $100,000 more than list. Didn't matter, my gas station was there. There was no inventory in the market.
Yeah.
Okay.
And distance away from Stafford Pond or whatever. So it's not always,
Right.
it's not a study for every property. It's
Yeah,
just.
yeah, I would submit that the larger the sample size, the more reliable the study. That's my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to take a brief recess, 10 minutes. Are there any more questions of the witness?
Yes, please. I just have one question for the Seasons representatives here. My name is William Schuman. I live at 3 Ocean View Avenue in Tiverton. What part of no don't you understand? Thank you.
Okay. Good night. Is there, have you rested? Is this your last witness?
Yes, on behalf of Tracy Hayward, yes, it's my last witness.
Okay. You don't have to stand up. I feel bad for you.
Thank you, Madam.
Do you plan on any rebuttal?
No, we're comfortable reserving any rebuttal for the written. We'll provide the transcripts, and each side can provide written summaries. I think you've heard enough from us, unless there's, a little bit of question, an oral argument at the end after you've gotten
Okay.
everything.
Whatever the board's I just meant if you do have any other witnesses.
I'm sorry, I answered the wrong question.
Yeah, it's all right.
No rebuttal.
Maybe I asked the wrong question.
We don't have any rebuttal witnesses.
Okay, very good. So the next stage in our proceeding would be to have public comment. And I know that everyone wants to be heard on that. And it's so hot in here tonight, and it was a long night last night, that maybe we should have a separate session for that, if that would be agreeable to the board.
Sure.
So,
We have no objection.
okay, good.
On that one front, I'm not sure, because I suspect that it could very well be, once the public knows that there's going to be opportunity for public comment, general public comment, whether or not we might decide a different venue to accommodate. Because, here, I know when we were at the school, we had considerable more people, so just to take under advisement, that's only one other thing I wanted to mention. I'll wait till parking. The other thing I was going to say is that as we, in anticipation of the post-hearing memorandums, is there a way that we might be able to get an index? I've lost track of exhibits. Maybe.
I never had any track of the exhibits.
We think we've, as we did with the appeal from the planning board matter, Pat in my office has been keeping track, and we'll circulate with the postcards and the solicitor what we think is right for everybody to review, and then.
And, if you agree to what exhibits are in, that's be great.
Yeah, maybe it's worth us having a call with the solicitor just on that.
We can
I don't think we have any disagreement, I'm not aware of any disagreement on what's in the record in terms of written materials. If we do, it's not material.
There were some things that were admitted, and then they were revised, and so.
Yes.
So we don't know which one was what.
That's right, some of the plans were revised, yes.
Yeah.
So we'll mark those and make that clear.
Okay.
Did the slide deck go in? Lay witness slide deck? Well, I think we should confirm.
Yeah, whatever was presented.
I've been saying that every time we meet.
Yes, the answer is yes. I don't think we'll have any disagreement on agreeing on the record. In our view, the applicant has no objection to almost everything being in the record. I'll go through and see if there's anything that we would object to, and I'm sure opponents could do the same. This is a fairly open procedural matter, so I don't think we'll have any. I'm confident we'll work it out with the solicitor.
Okay.
So what about the housekeeping matter of the 2 standing motions?
We'll hear that at the end, before you submit your briefs.
Okay, so we'll have public comment,
Right.
and then we might have one more meeting where we can make brief oral arguments.
Well, I would suggested that we get.
You want a bench memo on those two?
You've already submitted your memorandum on what your
Just a
motion to
motion,
strike.
not the supporting case law, et cetera.
Yeah.
Just a motion so that I preserve the record.
My preference would be to have both of you submit simultaneous filings with your exhibits, and then we'll schedule it for oral argument.
So we won't know in advance whether or not the motion to strike is being allowed?
You'll know that before you go to write your brief,
Okay.
okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are the people gonna know, I mean, I don't know, it's not advertised is the right word I'm looking for a public hearing for people to speak out other than the people just sitting here?
It'll be posted on the agenda,
It will
as
be.
we do, that's how we do it. Now, you represent Preserve Tiverton, I assume that you represent some of the people here in the audience already, so they've already, I don't know to the extent that you're gonna have all these people testify again. I would urge everybody to look at the standards that are in the record, in this ordinance, that's what the testimony or the comments from the public should be limited to. I don't like a seasons is like a great opinion, I get it, but it doesn't meet the standards. Like, this is not a popularity contest, as I explained. They have standards that they have to present. If you believe they didn't meet the standards, that's for the argument for the lawyers. But, I don't want a seasons next to my house or whatever is it, I understand that, and I appreciate that, but this is not a popularity contest. This is a legal standards that need to be met or not. So if those people who want to testify can testify why they believe the standards have or not been met, or how it affects them personally on those standards, that's what we want to hear. But we don't want to hear, I shouldn't speak for the board, but I don't think it doesn't do us any good to say, I don't like a seasons, I don't like this.
I don't know why you're looking at.
So, no, I'm just looking at both
Mr.
sides.
Marcello,
Yes.
my clients,
Yes.
those of members of Preserve
You've done
Tiverton,
an excellent job presenting your
have
case.
been
Yes.
identifying themselves when they come before
Right,
the board.
right.
So those individuals are certainly aware of the standards.
Right.
But
I'm just curious as whether you're gonna have them testify again, because they're your clients, you just rested, so I don't,
Yes,
usually, once you rest, we don't usually have your clients come back and then
Well, here's what I'll do. Here's what I'll respectfully suggest would be helpful to the board and within keeping with our ZBA rules, which would be, if those members had previously testified to make general comments on a topic like engineering, or to examine a witness, but they didn't get a chance to tell their story about traffic, let's say, then yes, I intend to let them testify, because I believe that's germane to your, if they want to say, I can't pull out of my driveway, and you haven't heard that testimony yet, then I would respectfully submit it could be appropriate, because you don't have that anecdotal evidence yet.
As you know, the court has already ruled many times that traffic studies and traffic incidents have to be through expert testimony.
Okay, then I will just tell you that the witnesses know what the special use permit, that my witnesses, that the members of Preserve Tiverton who will identify themselves will be aware of what the standards are.
I have a problem with that argument. I'm sorry. This is us last time I stand, it was America. If somebody has a problem, whatever it is, it's our job to sit where we're sitting and let the gentleman, her clients or not, there's people in the public who for or against have the right to stand up and tell us. And if someone here doesn't like it, I'm sorry. This is their right to speak and ask the question or make a complaint. I'm sorry that we think we have asking the lawyer to control the opinion of some public.
No, I'm suggesting, again, as a member of the zoning board, you should know that this is not a popularity contest. They have standards, so they have a right to speak all they want, and it may be all irrelevant. It may be all relevant. You know what I'm saying. We have heard it, and this board has been very good in letting people cross-examine witnesses and all that stuff. So no one is preventing anybody from exercising their rights. I'm just suggesting this is now the almost 10th, 11th hearing, and
But Mike, it's not tonight. When
I'm
the
not-
beginning,
excuse
when the
me,
beginning
excuse
of
me,
the
I was
hearing,
speaking.
it's not,
Excuse
I'm sorry,
me.
I'm finishing the
Excuse me,
argument.
I was
Now-
speaking.
So it's
So,
not
Ms.
the
Hartman.
beginning of next meeting, you bring it up to everybody in that meeting, not to tell this lawyer to control the volume. The beginning of next meeting, you tell everybody, this is what's important, this is the rule, this is what we listen to, this is not what we listen to. I disagree for the fact that you tell an attorney right now how to tell people to speak who's not even here.
Are you done?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I am confident, let me say, that you, the solicitor, and the chair, and the very experienced board can get the record we need at the public hearing.
Thank you. That's all I'm asking.
I wanted to also indicate that if people want to submit written arguments to us in lieu of testifying or addressing the board.
I will encourage them to do so.
They're free to do that too.
Thank you.
And we've gotten, quite a number of emails and,
Which we also need to submit to the record,
Yep,
which, I don't know, I think we're asking the We've asked the clerk to send them to you. I don't know if you've got them. but-
We've got them.
Yes, we've been receiving emails that you've been receiving, and
Okay,
we'll include
that's fine.
those
Thank
in our proposed
Yeah.
record for everybody's review and approval. No problem.
You gonna bait stamp them?
Oh, yeah, should we do that yet? Yeah, we can, I just.
Someone will do it.
Yeah, we'll do that. I haven't done it ever before in appeal, but there's no reason not to. We can.
Yeah, this is a big record, so.
Yeah, we'll bait stand, which is just numbering the pages sequentially.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll do that. And it occurs to me that the two motions are aligned. You're moving to strike, the opponent's, Ms. Benson's moving to strike Mr. Hoole's testimony as it relates to him being an expert on, or not being an expert on historic preservation. And we're objecting to proffered testimony on value not being submitted by an appraiser. I've already offered that whatever has been in the record is in the record. It was submitted as a document for your review if you choose to review it. I have no objection to a member of the public testifying as to that. I might suggest that we could resolve both motions just by agreeing and stipulating that to the extent that any testimony is presented that's not of expert qualification, the board can take it for what it's worth, which is really the standard.
I think that's what the standard is.
Which is the standard you're going to subscribe to anyway. This way we don't have to argue about that. We're not insisting that Mr. Hoole be qualified as an expert in historic preservation. He commented, much as Mr. Toback commented, on the tangential effects of character of the neighborhood, and that being a neighboring property. So I'm comfortable stipulating that Mr. Hoole is not an expert on historic preservation.
I can work it out.
Work it out, if you
Okay,
can.
I mean,
I think what I'm hearing is that we could have a colloquy, if you will. What we're trying to strike as evidence, what you're trying to strike as evidence, we might come to an agreement that evidence which was presented should be excluded from the record.
Well, I'm saying it should be included in the record, but the board can take it for what it's worth and what the board deems it worth. And I'm even stipulating that Mr. Hoole is not an expert in historic preservation. But if the board finds it informative, as, for example, his testimony as to the proximity of the historic district to the properties, and it affects his other testimony, his entire testimony is not stricken, but he's not considered an expert in historic preservation. So I'm just trying to save us some time and brief writing on an issue that's going to be resolved by you taking it for what it's worth anyway.
Maybe we can resolve
I mean,
that.
it seems to me that we take the evidence as we see the evidence, and, I want the record to be a complete record. You've all stated your objections, but I think that this could be resolved with a simple agreement of the parties.
Yeah, my only concern, Madam Chair, is twofold. I don't mean this in any disrespect to any member of this board, that they can, as board members, know when it should be given weight and when it shouldn't be. And I respectfully submit that some board members, not on this board, but on other boards that I've sat on, don't understand that standard. And they really,
I don't understand what you're saying.
So, for example, there could be a member of this board who says, oh, I think Mr. Hoole's testimony on historic qualities of characters is great, and I'm going to rule based on his testimony. When, in fact, if he's not an expert, it shouldn't be given weight. And I'm saying that some board members, whether it be on this board or other boards, don't understand that standard and may misapply the weight of that evidence when it shouldn't be applied at all. In fact, on appeal, if there was a decision of this board that it found Mr. Hoole's testimony that it didn't affect the historic district, that would be an appealable decision because he's not qualified he didn't give legally competent, relevant evidence.
I think, as you know, on the planning board appeal, this board did find some of the evidence that was presented not to be credible, and it was upheld by the court. So this board is well aware of how to weigh the evidence and whether someone's an expert or not, and particularly with the historic issue that came up. So
Maybe on that issue particularly or not, I think some of the things that they were saying is that lay people talking about traffic or this or that, that was a little more.
But it was also about the historic, right? It was also about the historic district issue,
Exactly, it
yeah.
was a much more defined issue, a lay person.
Right.
But when you have an expert who, in real estate, who's opining about historic, that can blur the lines as to whether or not he's qualified or not, what weight is given to that evidence. And I think that's a slippery slope and dangerous, much more clearer when a lay person provides it. So for example, you said the case law says you can't talk about traffic as a lay person. You can say, I think that counts speeding. Case law says that, you can do that, but you can't talk about traffic impacts. I get it. So I
Richard,
think that
we're happy, since neither side had an expert historian, historic preservation expert, I'm happy to brief it.
Well,
I think you guys can decide what you want to brief, we'll decide
I
it.
want to push back at Mr. Stoltzman's. Our planning expert, Mr. Friedrich, had the requisite education, experience on historic districts and the impacts on it. So
Oh.
to suggest that we didn't have an expert here in this proceeding as an expert on historic, and maybe that's something we've got to decide. Or maybe that's briefed in the memos.
You guys can work it out, I'm sure you can.
Sure.
You're good lawyers.
Okay.
I have a general question. I am a member of Preserve Tiverton.
Excuse me, someone, could you state your name, ma'am?
Ms. Herman, can you come up to the mic, please? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Carol Herman, a member of Preserve Tiverton. We will have members who want to participate in public comment. All of the people who participate will not be members. So as Attorney Benson suggested, we certainly can't control how people act in front of the board because we don't have contact with them before they show up. However, we will certainly do our best to share what the rules of the public hearing will be. So one thing Mr. Marcello made clear is that people should address the standards for granting the special use permits and how they feel that the burden of proof, which is on the applicant, has not been met for which specific standards. Do you anticipate having a time limit for an individual who is working through these standards and presenting relevant testimony?
That's a good question. We probably should consider a
never
time.
have.
We haven't?
We've never had a time limit.
Okay.
Um,
sorry. So as long as they're speaking to the standards, they will be allowed to continue?
It's not up to.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to hear the same repetitive stuff from different people. I mean, we've heard a lot of, already we've gotten a lot of public comment.
Well, I think I would disagree there. We, as the public, at least as I have understood it, have not been allowed to give general comment. We've only been allowed to ask questions
Right.
of the witnesses.
But a lot of those questions are loaded up with information about how they feel about the project.
Okay.
And you're also
So-
represented by counsels. You have a counsel who's arguing your case for you, Preserve Tiverton. I understand there might be people who are not part of that group,
Right.
but you guys are represented by counsel who have put on a very good case.
Right.
And that we have to rely upon that. So to have, and again, it's their case, but to have 20 people say the same thing over and over again, if this board wants to hear it, that's fine. But I'm just telling you that if that's what you want to do, that's fine. We'll hear it. We've heard, this is the 11th hearing we've had. But I'm just suggesting that, to suggest that you have very capable counsel. They put on their case. The case is now over. They rested. So
Right, but as individuals, especially property owners in the neighborhood, I still think we need to have our voices heard.
that's fine. I don't think anyone's stopping you.
And that's the purpose of a public hearing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
So I think we need to continue this to our December meeting, right?
Can we try to get to school? Or we're gonna then jam everybody?
That's going to be another issue. So we have to just
So-
we have to
so
find a
we-
place.
should we-
so-
I mean, this is going to take some hours, right, to hear public testimony. We're amenable to whatever the board wants, providing dates like we've done in the past by your December meeting for sometime in December. We have the holidays. Maybe the applicant's amenable to whatever
So
scheduling you want.
as we've done in the past, we will continue this to our December meeting to the extent that we have an agreed date for December, and we can get a room. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on at the schools during December, a lot of concerts and things, so getting a room might not be as easy as you think.
If it kicks in, I mean, we don't want this to drag on forever, nobody does, but we understand this process requires a lot of public input, so we'll work with you and the opponents in the
And if we can't
calendar.
get the room, we'll hear from the people that are here, and we'll have another hearing.
Whatever.
How many times?
We're amenable to whatever works.
So figure it out.
Yeah.
So are we gonna do something later this month or in December?
We're gonna put it down for December. Just as a control date, like we've done before.
Particular day or just?
A regular meeting in December?
Regular meeting.
Yeah,
okay.
and then and we might, that might be a good day, we might not have anything on, I don't know what the
Yeah,
calendar is
that's what
yet.
I was gonna
Yeah,
ask.
I'm not sure
No, you
yet.
have stuff on. I saw the agenda.
Oh, did we have it already?
She circulated the agenda today. There's 2 or 3 matters on the
So
regular meeting.
it won't be our December meeting then.
Yeah, so that'll just be like a control date.
Control date, but it will be on the agenda to have the actual date. The agenda will have the actual date, where, in the location where the second meeting will be, as we've done in the past. We're just gonna follow the procedure. No surprises.
No Wednesdays.
You guys gotta get me dates. And like I
Yes,
said-
we'll get you dates.
Yeah, and like I said, the school might be difficult because of concerts and other events, sports.
Anybody have any concerns or questions? Seeing none.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor?
Good job, Ed.